to yet another special edition of Labor Matters right here on KBN TV, the finest television. I am your host as usual, Patricia Chilambikwa, and we are live on DSTV channel 279, GoTV 27, Topstar 102, and live on our Facebook page, which is KBN TV. I'm super excited today because we're looking at an interesting topic, and I'm looking forward just to interact with you, our viewers. So our topic of discussion for today is HR important. Is HR really important? That is what we are looking at today. So if you have any questions, comments about our topic of discussion for today, feel free to use the number which is right on your TV screen and let us get talking right here. So in the studio, I'm not alone. You might be wondering, why is she talking? Is she alone in the studio? No. I'm not alone in the studio. I am with Mr. Owen Kabanda, who is a management and leadership advisor, international speaker, and neuropsychologist. Mr. Kabanda, welcome to Labor Matters.
Thank you. How are you doing, Patricia?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good.
How is the weather?
The weather is good also. I think we have had some rains. Now it's a little bit cold. Yeah, so it's fluctuating, but it's good.
Amazing. It's good to have you on Labor Matters once again. I know our viewers are always expecting to see us every Sunday as we get to talk about issues to do with employees and employers.
Exactly.
I am super excited about our topic of discussion for today. And before we dive into our conversation, we saw you traveled, going somewhere. And I mean, you, Mr. Kabanda, indeed, you are an international speaker. We saw like you traveled to Livingston for the HR Summit and AGM. If you can just share with us your experience there, because we saw even the Minister of Labor urging HR practitioners to work really hard. If you can just take us through and just give us a little bit of what happened and what was discussed.
Well, really, it was a summit for HR practitioners in Zambia, and at the end of it, so it started on Wednesday. So 2 days of actual summit. We were doing the trainings. We learned a lot actually from various speakers that were lined up. So it's really a great appreciation to Mr. Kelvin Shamizinga, the President, Mr. Innocent Korana, the Honorary Secretary, and the entire Council and the Secretariat for putting up, a good program. And it was quite interactive also. It was great to meet with the various HR practitioners, because we have our WhatsApp groups and other platforms where we discuss things, but being there and discussing in person, that one was actually very, very good. And also just receiving some feedback from colleagues about some of the works we're doing, how they are learning from what we are sharing, and also others also giving us feedback on other things they would like us to start venturing, us to start looking at. It was also very, very good. But over and above, what was also even very good was really the message, like you said, from the minister. So she talked about the need for us as HR practitioners to be involved in the government's transformation agenda. As you know, the country has got a number of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities. So the key issue really for us from the HR side is what is our role in this transformation agenda. And it's important that each HR practitioner can really see how they play a role in that transformation agenda. It starts from the plans themselves. You have to be very clear about how you have done your HR plans to make sure that it adds value to the company or to the institution, if it's a government institution, or even if it's a private company or an NGO. You really need to work around plans that bring about that kind of growth for your institution and for the nation. Your recruitments, they really need to be on point, because when you recruit wrong people, those wrong people come into the institution, they are getting the salary, but they are not bringing the value as you would expect. What that means then, it's not adding to that transformation agenda. So you can look at it from the perspectives around the company's strategic plans. You look at the structures, how your structures actually aligned, or are you carrying so many people who are not adding so much value. So there's a lot of work from the HR side in terms of looking at all the structures, the systems, the people that we have. Even how do we capacitate them to make sure that they are actually being productive? Because at the end of the day, as a nation, that is what we need. We need a vibrant workforce. where each person is working very well and they're adding value to their respective institutions. In that way, when the company or the institution that you're working for can do something good, it then translates into the whole nation actually bringing about this national development that we talk about. But also, it's important to really see that each HR person in the nation starts to think about how they play that role in adding to the transformation agenda in everything that they do.
It was really a serious and vital summit, I must make mention. Because
it was very, very good, actually.
Everything that was discussed are of benefit to the Zambian citizens.
Yeah.
And away from serious work, Mr. Kabanda, we know that when you're on labor matters, we are talking about serious issues. And I believe when you did attend the summit, serious and important kind of conversations. But I'm now wondering, did you do anything fun apart from serious kind of work?
Of course. Yeah, so really, after the summit, we had some good time, mingling with the colleagues. Do some dances here and there. But also beyond that, we had a chance to, visit the Big Fours, relax a little bit. I also managed to even go on that the zip line. It was quite a lot of adrenaline, but we live life once, so we need to actually take risks and enjoy ourselves. Because that's what matters. At the end of the day, it's really to balance both sides of life. It's not always being serious and no. I always believe, live a balanced life. Tomorrow you die.
I believe we'll make you dance one of these days, because you did mention saying that you danced a little bit. So make sure that one day on labor matters will make you dance. So that
maybe we'll come up with that program one day. I need a competitor though.
We'll bring one, don't worry.
Okay.
We'll bring one. Maybe our transmission controller, John, will be your competitor for that particular day. Mr. Kabanda, if we can now dive into our topic of discussion, if you can discuss or maybe give us the different types of HR work from clerical to strategic human resource.
Yeah, so when we look at HR, like I actually started mentioning, I know that sometimes all these debates is really HR important. Maybe you can work without even HR and things can still be okay. Maybe depending on how small really the institution is. But it is very important to understand that HR is extremely important for the development of any or the growth of any institution. It is extremely important. And why it's important to look at HR is because from what he's saying, if we look at the HR from the lowest level to the highest level, there are different functions being carried out. Some, like you said, administrative kind of work or clerical work. It starts from just the mere photocopying of forms or leave forms or any of those things that at the lowest level, maybe somebody who just finished, maybe they have a certificate, they just finished school, and so on. They could start at the lowest level. But the work that they do, in as much as it can look very simple, and this is why sometimes as HR we are accused, no, maybe you're just paper pushers, you just run around with the leave forms. But we have to understand, Patricia, that work itself is important for the employees to access what they need. For instance, even at that lowest level, if that HR person has not made sure that all your conditions are met, do you have the contract, do you have a provision for you to get that salary advance, do you have a provision for you to get that leave and all those things, then you might not access those things as an employee. So it may look like the HR people are just doing the basic things, but even those basic things, they really add value to the employees being able to access the conditions of service and benefits that they have in the company. Beyond that, when you go a little bit higher, you're talking at officer or senior officer level and things of that nature, there is a lot of fragmentation or specialization that also starts to come in, where you can have, especially for big institutions, you can have an HR person focused, for instance, on recruitment or resourcing. So their job is to make sure that they are recruiting the right people to be brought into the institution. So that is their specialization. They make sure that they use all the tools that are necessary for you to hire the right person. Beyond that, you can have the team or an HR person who is focused on, the compensation and benefits. Meaning that person's job is to make sure that they look at the contract, they look at the conditions and say, what is it that we are paying a person? Are we matching everything? Everything is okay? Issues of the payroll? Are we making sure that people are paid on time? Because again, like I said, if you say HR is not important and people are not getting paid on time, then you have a bigger problem. Because these are things that sometimes lead to even people, putting down tools and saying we are not going to work. You can also have a team or an HR person who's focused purely on training and development. So they are now looking at the whole institution and saying, what kind of skills do we have? What kind of resource do we have as an institution? And what do we need to start now bringing in terms of the skills and knowledge for our staff for them to start performing better? Because it's really about the institution or your business performing better and better each time. So you can have those kind of things. You have other HR persons who might be focused on just staff welfare. These are the people that make sure that you go, you start do your aerobics, you do your jumping up and down to really make sure that you're healthy. They could bring on board a mental health specialist, for instance, or a medical specialist, or whatever kind of specialist to really help you in terms of your mental health, dealing with stress, issues of physical health. At the end of the day, you want to have a workforce that is really, they're very okay and they're able to work. So at that level, HR, there is a lot of function. Now, like I mentioned, you can have all these specializations in a bigger institution. In some institutions, it's one HR person doing all these things from recruitment, salaries, training and development, performance management, all the way to staff separation. So you can have it at that level. At a strategic level, you're now talking about like HR managers or HR directors, okay? They are focused, and it's important to understand. At that level, the focus is now, from the word itself, strategic. The HR is sitting down and looking at, okay, where are we at the moment? And the starting point for bigger institutions, basically you have the strategic plan. If you don't have a strategic plan, it's a different story. You can still look at the company's strategic direction. Those are two different things. This is where you're saying we are going to go this way. Now, when you have a strategic plan, that strategic plan was approved by the board. The HR's job at that point is to make sure that now there is, first of all, that strategic plan, it has objectives. In some institutions, there's a strategy team. In other institutions, HR is doing almost everything. So HR has to make sure that those objectives which are sitting in that strategic plan, they are being now broken down to departments and to individual employees. And the employees have to sign what are called key performance indicators or KPIs. And these are the targets now that the employees are going to be assessed on, from the CEO to the lowest level. Because at the end of the day, what you want is to make sure that employees' efforts are being put in a particular direction. It's not because I was doing this. If what you are doing is not in line with the strategic direction of the institution, then it's not adding value. And that's why you find a mismatch where at the strategic level of HR, they have not put in a lot of effort to make sure that everybody's effort is put in one direction.
From what you are saying, Mr. Kabanda, if I got you correct, you mentioned saying that there are different specialization when it comes to HR. And we usually see you go to different places, and on this program you have been discussing all matters to do with HR. So which specialization do you belong to? We might be wondering, we don't know. And you mentioned saying that there's specialization when it comes to HR.
No, for me, Patricia, I come from a consultant's background, okay, and I've been also HR manager for different companies, both local and international companies, and I'm also working with the government institution. So it is a mixture of everything. So from the strategic point of view, for instance, the work I do with my employer, depending if it is, we're looking at odd companies, the work will be now involving their performance to see how the performance is matching towards the targets and things that need to be done. If we have to do some restructuring, we go into doing those kind of work. If it is a new company being set up, my work then will then involve looking at the direction of this institution. Then I start now working out the organization structures, work out the numbers, work out the recruitment plan, and then also the salary structures. From those salary structures, then work out the labor costs. So that means for each employee that I'm providing for the structure, need to also calculate what it will cost the company on a monthly basis. That means the salary itself, the cost of NAPSA, NEMA, workers' compensation, the cost of leave days, the cost of gratuity, and any other provision, including skills levy, and any other requirement for the employer. So we then combine all that, calculate everything, and then you have a total cost to company. Now that total cost to company, then it starts to inform us when we look at the revenue of the company, how many people we need to have at a particular time, because then there are specific ratios that we work with in terms of your labor cost to revenue. So for me, that's the kind of HR that I do, including trainings and so on, and going out to, so like those things that you're talking about of going around, sometimes after doing all those things, then you go around to do recruitments and then leave the management to run those kind of things. So basically, both on the operational level, when it comes to doing the actual implementation, we will do that. At the strategic level, is now when we sit down with companies to map out how they should work, the trainings that they have to do, the structures and systems that have to be put in place. Yeah.
Amazing, well explained. And another thing is that some business owners believe that anyone can do HR and anyone can practice HR, even if they are not licensed in Zambia or any other country. I think it is a situation where even in the media fraternity now, everyone wants to be a journalist, even though they are not trained.
As long as they have the phone.
Exactly. It's a situation that we are now facing right now.
Yeah.
So what is your take about this?
So from the HR perspective, really, like you said, people sometimes believe wrongly that anybody can do HR. There is no harm in starting to do HR at the lower level, as long as you start that HR in the right way. First of all, as an institution, you need HR because HR is specialized to the fact that they got to learn how to take care of employees. Okay. Now, I understand some institutions, what they do is really even just to get an HR at a lower level because they just don't think it's very, very important or anybody can do it. Some people or some businesses could go and just promote someone who was at least dealing with the, maybe the time cards for employees and say, okay, this one they can also be doing HR things now. These are things that create problems in companies because when certain decisions have to be made, that person might not be exposed enough to understanding how business from a strategic point of view needs to be run, also from the HR side of things, the systems that need to be in place, the structures that we talk about in terms of organization structures, the training that managers need to undergo, or supervisors or line managers, what they need to really and fully understand. So that person could then become a potential danger to the institution itself because they are not giving professional advice to the institution. Rather, what they do normally is when the boss says jump, oh, how high, sir? Because they do not have the necessary backbone to say, no, we can't do this, sir, because of X, Y, Z. And really, this is also even just to colleagues who are in HR, that it's important that we spend time to understand the law itself, because we can only advise from that perspective where we are comfortable with the labor laws prevailing in the country. If we are not comfortable with those, we have not spent time, then we start using emotions to advise, and that those sometimes become challenged because it's a personal opinion. The issue of understanding the business also becomes very, very important, because that's the only way also that the business owners or supervisors or line managers or CEOs can appreciate when an HR has an understanding of the business, then they can give proper advice. The other part is understanding people, like we've been saying. There are these three things that we keep on emphasizing. Understand the law, understand the business, and understand people. meaning you spend time understanding the psychology of people. How do we actually deal with one individual, and how do you deal with the groups? How do you deal with the same individual in different circumstances to make sure that that person continuously is engaged and they are feeling happy to actually work with your institution. So yes, you can say no, we don't need HR, or anybody can do HR, but it is not the case. You need to be trained. You need to understand what it is to do HR. But apart from all that, there is a legal requirement. It's not just, okay, it's nice to, to maybe have some training in HR. No. There is actually a legal requirement that anybody, especially if you are operating in Zambia, even in other countries, it's really the same. There is a legal requirement that people who are practicing HR should be licensed practitioners. Because you need to be a member of the Zambia Institute of Human Resource. You cannot be practicing HR and you have never been to the institute. No, that cannot be the case, because then your practice is not being regulated. In fact, it is an offense for the person who's practicing and the person who employed that person. The two of them end up being fined. So it's important, especially even for colleagues who might be out there and you're doing your HR and you have not been registered, come through. The institute is there. You can go online. There's a website there, or visit them in Lusaka, or their phone calls. Or if you can, for those who come on the WhatsApp platforms, you can always ask for guidance, and you'll be taken through the process of actually becoming a member. It's important that you're a registered member and you are fully paid up. It's also not just a matter of registering, but also being fully paid up. And the importance of this is that actually HR practitioners, their behavior is regulated in a way. And so if there's an HR practitioner who's doing wrong things, even the general public or employees in that institution have the right to report this person to the institute. The institute has a disciplinary committee that will sit down that person and they will guide them, either punish that person if it requires so, or there could be other measures even beyond that could be taken. But again, this is why we're emphasizing people who are going to be practicing HR in the country need to be registered members with licenses. And every year they renew those practicing licenses.
Well explained. This is not just a matter of being trained, but you have to be registered.
Exactly.
As an HR practitioner. I hope our viewers are learning something, because these things have to end, because we are really fighting this. You can't just wake up and say, no.
I say for HR.
Yeah.
No.
And
actually, Patricia, this is even to the viewers. If, for instance, you're working in an institution where you find that there is someone, or you suspect that somebody is really practicing HR without a license here, report it to the institute. Just go online, go to their website, their contacts there, and just say, in our company here, we do think that this person, we suspect. You don't even have to have the proof. If you suspect it, report to them. And then the institute will have a way to look at that. Because as you understand, the country is vast. It's a huge country here. So the institute cannot be in every place, so it's really upon the general public. If they find someone who is actually working, and you suspect that they're actually not part of the institute, then you report them. So the institute can then follow up and actually make those people to go through the required processes and give them guidelines even on how to be working. And also, like we've been saying even on this platform before, being part of the institute also gives you a platform for support. There are these WhatsApp groups which are there, and people are able to ask questions, people are learning from each other. There's quick response on matters that you might be facing. So why would you want to be like an island sitting in a little corner somewhere without being part of a bigger group?
Just like that. Well explained, Mr. Kabanda. To our viewers, if you have any questions about our topic of discussion, or maybe your question is in connection with what we are talking about today, please feel free to send us a text message using the number which is right on your TV screen, or better, you can go on our Facebook page, which is KBN TV, and drop us that comment. Now, as the lowest level, Mr. Kabanda, of HR, what are some of the activities involved?
Yeah, so at the lowest level, really, Patricia, like I mentioned, it's more of the work that involves, let's say, you'll be typing out certain things as the supervisor or your line manager might, instruct you. You'll be running around doing reports as may be instructed. They making sure they are filing reports or filing the employee documents. It is really the basic things in HR. But like I mentioned, they look basic, but they are extremely important. Remember, if, for instance, the company paid or even just let's talk about employment. You've heard of ghost workers. You can employ someone, but if the documents go missing, and you have even paid 1 or 2, 3 salaries to the person, if it is found that the papers are not there, that person will be classified as a ghost worker, or that person is receiving salaries or without the due process having been followed. But maybe it was just a paper that went missing. So even at that lowest level of HR, their work becomes very, very important.
Now, do we have any key duties when it comes to HR officers?
The key duties really are the same ones that I really mentioned in terms of making from recruitment to salaries and payroll and employee benefits to issues around training and development. So for the HR officers, their work again really depends on the institution. How small, how big is the institution? Those things become very, very critical. We also have HR officers who work as business partners. So there's a lot of work around analyzing even the HR work. What is HR doing? How are we doing our recruitment? So you start working around the ratios because you want to now be in a space where you can inform management around the impact of HR. And one of the things we actually emphasize a lot is around matrices, around your time for recruitment, your turnaround time for your recruitments, how long do you take, how many people, that's the quality of your own recruitments, how many people are working even beyond your probation and all those kind of things. We also look at issues to do with the training. How many hours have you invested in training? How many people have been trained? So there is a lot of work in HR, and that's why it's important even for HR practitioners to really understand, because sometimes you become very, very comfortable. Maybe you are in that, in the field of recruitment, and you really become so comfortable that you've spent 6 years, you're just doing recruitment. You have not been exposed to the other areas. You can be in compensation and benefit, and you spend 6, 7, 8, 10 years in compensation. And yes, it's good to specialize and you gain more and more knowledge in your field. But it's also important to understand, especially if you're going to move and go to another company. If you're just within your institution, sometimes it becomes very good. So for this aspect around the work of HR, it is from recruitment to all the way to staff separation.
Now, at the high level, Mr. Kabanda, what do HR managers or maybe directors do? As you may know, maybe people would complain that these big HR people are just, in meetings after meetings, and they can just delegate work. Hey, Peter, where are you? Do ABCD. I'm attending a meeting at 12. Hey, John, where are you? So at 16, I'll be doing ABCD. Your take about this, because I think a lot of people have been complaining when it comes to such kind of attitude from HR practitioners.
For the big bosses.
Big bosses.
Yes, so one of the things that you have to understand, and this is really for our viewers, we've heard of such complaints even before. At a higher level, like I mentioned at the very beginning of the program, at a higher level, it's more strategic HR. At strategic HR level, your job is now more around planning and making sure that your HR activities are actually aligned with the institution, and you are going to get value from your employees. Now, I'm using these simplified words. The issue here is at the strategic level, if you have an HR director, they need to be able to translate that strategic plan. It's not a matter of just saying a strategic plan is sitting on the table gathering dust. They should be able to look at that document and say, how do we break this thing down? What are we going to be targeting each month, each quarter, each year? What are the targets? So like I mentioned, you break those things down to departments and down to employees. On top of that, at that strategic level, the HR should be looking at the organization structure and saying, are we organized in a manner that allows us to deliver on our strategic plan? We've seen some companies, you have changed your strategic plan, yet the organization structure is still the same. You cannot work like that. Even like we were talking about the transformation agenda, I did mention issues around even looking at structures. If you are going to change your strategic plan, it goes without saying that you have to change the organization structure. So at that high level, at the strategic HR level, the HR person will then look at how do we now go about changing our organization structure? Do we do it internally, or do we get a consultant on board and make sure that the dots that connect the departments, the levels you're creating are actually adding value? The HR director also at that level is dealing with issues of cost control. Whereas the officers are going around, if it's Labor Day, they will go and buy chitenges and whatever it is. At that strategic level, the job of that director or the chief has to see that, are we doing everything in line with our budgets? Remember, even before the cost control, there is a part where they have to start with the actual work plans. Meaning at that level, you need to prepare the work plans for the year, and you do the budgets for the year. So when it comes to cost control, you are basically saying, are we also managing everything? It's not like, no, because finance will tell us when we have exceeded our budget. No. You are responsible for resource management in your department. That means you're looking at the work plans and saying, are we moving as a company and as a department in line with our plans? And are we spending in line, especially on labor-related costs? As well as anything that is the budget within your department. At that level of strategic HR, you're also looking at issues around your productivity. Are we actually, our employees, productive? So what measures are you actually looking at? So at that level, there's a lot of work that involves a lot of planning. You're also looking at issues of training and development. How are we actually capacitating our staff? Are they having the right training for them to deliver? Who should we bring? Should we train people internally? Should we send them somewhere? If we are sending them somewhere, it is coming at what cost? So there is a lot of work. So that's why the HR director has to really, I know you talk about in meetings, and it appears like they are always in meetings. It's not always the case. But yes, sometimes those meetings are meant, they are sometimes not even all HR meetings. Some are meetings from other departments. Because you cannot also work as an HR director at that strategic level where you're simply working in isolation. So it becomes very important for the HR head or director to also understand what the other departments are planning. So that you can, if let's say the operations people want to expand certain operations, HR has to see, when do we actually bring the people? And then we have to work out the budgeting. So the HR directors or heads of HR in various institutions at that strategic level, they have to spend a lot of time in planning and making sure now that also whatever they have been planning, you are implementing. So that's why sometimes you can see them like they spend a lot of time in these planning meetings and so on. But coming to the issue of delegation, of course, it's not everything that the head of HR is going to do. And that's why they are sitting at that strategic level. Their job is to see what is it that we now need to do, and then you have now the various sections. Remember, I talked about even in the HR department, you can have various sections. Okay, so you have a section for recruitment, you have a section for compensation, and so on. So at that level now, you have to see who is going to do that, but you have to coordinate everything. You have to manage everything. Because if one section is failing within the department, it reflects on the overall head. So yes, delegation will happen. It is a way of working, but at the same time, that director has to coach the people below them, and also make sure that also even just outside of the department, the other managers are also trained properly because if you are going to leave HR management only to the people within the department, you are dead. Because the employees are interacting on a daily basis with their line managers. That's why those line managers, you have to make sure that you bring on board trainers or you send them for training or whatever. Just make sure that you are creating the right culture so that employees can thrive. So there is actually a lot of work up here. It's a lot of mental work to make sure that you are putting everything in line. But again, it is the way it is. But it's important that people understand when they're not being seen, because some directors in meetings. But again, we are not saying that should be an excuse.
I was getting there actually. I was getting there. I'm like, I'm sure HR managers are like, you're representing us well. Thank you for backing us up. I mean,
no, not really. Remember, there's strategic HR work and there's operational. So yes, at some point they have to sit down, and if there are, approvals to be made, they have to make sure that those things are done on time. It is of no use to try and pile up paperwork. You can't even be seen when somebody walks in. The director is sitting behind, and it's a whole bunch of paperwork in front of them. No. That's not what we could consider as being very efficient, because now we want to be seeing all this paperwork so that people can say what we are working. No. There still need to make sure that the things that need to be approved, they're approved. Work that needs to go maybe to other departments, it moves, because at the end of the day, these are the things that create problems. If you're keeping a lot of work, it's really piling up. It starts to now affect efficiency, even delivery of the juniors within the department, or even in other departments where maybe somebody needed to go somewhere and you have not approved certain things, or there's somebody who has brought a certain complaint and you're not working on those. So both at the strategic level and the operational level, the head or the director of HR or the chief of HR has to make sure that both are being balanced and we're getting the job done.
Well explained. I'm now thinking, do you have any key metrics which can be used to measure the impact of HR in the business?
Yeah, there are several HR metrics that are actually used, and again, we do some training for that.
Okay.
From the time of you making the plans, you need to have specific targets that you're going to be working towards. As HR, you need to look at the metrics around your recruitment. So how, like I mentioned, how fast is your recruitment? So we have to have specific metrics speaking to the time for recruitment. Also metrics speaking to the time for the quality of those recruitments. Issues of your labor costs. How much are you spending on labor? You have to track those kind of things, because if you're going to be spending over and above the budget, then it's not also working very well for your company. There are also data that we do track around issues of staff turnover. So your staff turnover rate, how many people are actually staying, how many people are going, and you need to be very clear about also the reasons why the people are leaving, because if there are reasons that pertain to the employer, then you need to make sure that you start finding ways and means of correcting those things. If people are leaving because they are not happy with the way they are being managed, you now need to look at sorting out that management problem. If people are leaving maybe because they have, the conditions of service are lower than they expect, you need to fix that. So those matrices become very, very important, because then it informs the decisions that you have to make. For instance, you have to carry out surveys, salary surveys, engagement surveys, and whatever it is that you need to do. Then you can also track data around your training and development. How many hours of investment have you done in terms of training? How much actually in terms of cash, in terms of the total amount of money that you're spending? You can also break down around gender. You can also break down around age. So there are a lot of matrices that you can actually follow. Now, what is key is for your institution, what is it that we want to report on? And how does this, for instance, if you're looking at productivity, how does this work around the issues of productivity for your institution? Could you possibly work out even the number of, let's talk about the performance itself that I was talking about. If you are going to have performance targets set, to what extent are the staff actually performing in line with those targets? Okay, what are the results of your performance? So the matrices are very, very critical if you want, and this is where you start to show the value of HR. Because sometimes people say, oh, we don't even know what is the importance of having this HR here. It's because sometimes we are not reporting things. You know, we see those lines in board reports where you just say the atmosphere is conducive, there is industrial harmony. So what? What is that translating to? If you have targets, for instance, even on industrial harmony, do you have some targets that you've set for yourself as an institution? Because you can also track that part. If in the past we were having challenges with work stoppages and so on, what did that translate to in terms of the productivity? And you work with the other departments to measure those kind of things. So that when you are now saying our target is to have 0 strikes and things like that, you can then see even how much you're going to save or how much would have not been lost because these strikes have not happened. So there is a lot of work around the data, and that's why, again, it's important. If the HR can do this internally, they sit down and do it internally. They do a mapping of the key indicators they're going to be tracking on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, and you can then see now the trend. You can do your trend analysis. From there, you can then inform your decisions that you now tell management, no, sir, or my CEO, we need to go this direction because our results are showing us like this. The way we're doing management, our results are showing us like this. Our compensations, the results are showing like this. You are now talking with hard figures. In that way, you can actually tell management, and they can listen to you far much easier than, like I said, where it's just personal opinion. No, I think here. No, I think here. No. We encourage HR practitioners to actually start tracking data. And again, if they cannot do it internally, like we've said before, you can always get a consultant to help you set up the key things that you're going to be looking at. And then you can make informed decisions.
Amazing. Now, from what you are saying, Mr. Kabanda, if you can explain some keys or maybe knowledge the HR professionals need to acquire, maybe from the lower level to the strategic level. Just briefly explain this before we get to read some of the text messages which we've received from our viewers.
All right, so when it comes to the key skills and knowledge, at the lower level, for an HR officer or senior HR officer or whatever about title, business partner, key to it is really, first of all, being very organized. Because at that lower level, if you're going to start losing things, it doesn't really help. It's important that the person is well organized. You also need to really understand the issues to do with report writing, because we review a number of reports in institutions, and you start asking, what exactly were they trying to say here? Because you have to also understand, when, for instance, an auditor comes, you will not be there to explain things. Because people write, no, but what I meant there, no. You cannot be writing a report and you are now escorting the report. No. You should not write a report with an idea that I'll go and explain if they need. Everything should be well explained, the reasons why, if there's backup information, because when the auditors come, especially for institutions where audits are undertaken, you need to make sure that the reports have been put properly. We also encourage at that lower level to also invest in understanding even basic tools, like even Excel, if you can. It helps for you to do certain reports. We're talking about analysis of information. Then also understand basic psychology, as we said. How are you going to understand the people so that you are working well with them? There's no need to be scared of talking to Mr. Banda. Just face them, talk to them. They're just employees. Whether they are angry or they're not angry, you should be able to talk to people. So there are a lot of skills. Now I'm also encouraging people to also invest in artificial intelligence, because that is what actually, from the trainings we are doing, you can literally see that the work that, for instance, could be done in 2 weeks, you're doing it in less than 5 minutes.
Amazing. You know, your statement has just reminded me how HR practitioners are often accused of being on the side of either the employer or maybe the employees. Now, HR is seen to be weak at some point to respond to cries of employees. I don't know why, but that's the perception that always goes round. Now, what's your take about this? Because it has been going over and over, people complaining of no, HR is always siding with the employer and whatnot.
Yeah, it's a long it's a long conversation.
You being the employment expert to start with.
So the thing is, HR sometimes there's confusion. Like, where do you belong? The problem is people want to see camps. Okay, it's us against them. So it's us, the employees, against management. So HR, are you on our side or are you on management side? Unfortunately, HR is in the middle. Okay, it's like one leg in the water, one leg on the land. So, but the issue here is, first of all, it's important to understand that HR, in a legal sense, will be classified as employer because they represent the employers, and that's why we even tell HR practitioners, you cannot be signing a contract as a witness for the employee, because tomorrow when we go to court, you cannot go and stand on the side of the employee. So just for clarity, HR is there to look at the company's policies, procedures, and make sure that the company is really protected. That means in the company being protected, the HR has to now do everything that it's required to do, including making sure that these same policies are in place, making sure that the managers are trained, making sure employees are trained to understand what is required of them, so that there is that focus for the institution to just focus on production. But on the other side, you also have to understand that HR is also an employee. So they go through the same pain, and sometimes as HR, it's even more difficult because as an employee, there are certain grievances you may have, but also at the same time, you are sitting on the part where you have been given certain information. So as employees, you have to understand HR is sitting on both sides. Also, HR will be there to actually support you when you have challenges. Their job is to make sure that you are really taken good care of, as long as the HR is performing in a professional manner. So, are they weak? No, it's sometimes just dependent on the circumstances that they may have. But also we encourage HR practitioners, like we said, be professional, advise your management to do the right things, and where you are stuck, there are colleagues and the mentors and even the institute that can help the HR person on how best they can get around certain things, because sometimes it's just our ability to sell certain ideas to management or to convince them or to tell them why they have to do it, especially if it's something to do with the law.
So what is important is for HR to be professional and not side with either the employers or employees. But we know.
Your side is the law. Whoever you try to please, you will be dead.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Wanda, what about the issue of sitting on people's files? This one you have to respond. I mean, we have issues of they're not contacting candidates after interviews, and sometimes we hear stories of HR being involved in some issues of maybe getting money or asking for favors from candidates. Your take about this?
Patricia, those are I think they fall in the category of ethical issues. Okay, what that simply means is that as long as the HR practitioner is professional, those things shouldn't be the case. Talking about sitting on people's, I don't know, whatever the context, and it's in the interest of time, I would have loved to explore what that sitting on a file really means, but generally the understanding is that the files are not moving or papers are not leaving the HR office. What we can encourage HR practitioners is just really be efficient, like we said. Look at things, break down, prioritize work, and get things to move. Sometimes it's quite difficult because you have to do a lot of analysis. About the other issues,
the issue of getting money.
Getting money, again, that one, in fact, if a person has any proof to that effect, they have the right, like I mentioned even at the beginning of the program, to approach the Zambia Institute of Human Resources to report that kind of an HR who's asking for such things, because you get paid a salary, and your job is basically just to deliver on your work and not to start getting things that you're not entitled to.
These things are really happening. I hope our viewers are taking note to everything you've just said, because you hear a lot of people complaining of saying, no, I was told to give a certain amount of money in exchange of this particular job and whatnot.
They can even go to the police.
Just like that.
Yeah.
This has been an amazing conversation, I must make mention, Mr. Khan, and I'm hoping if we can have a part 2 of this conversation.
Definitely, we'll try and see, and probably we'll talk to our colleagues at the institute.
Mr. Kabanda, your last remarks as we get to wrap up this conversation.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for having me, and I'm glad. I must mention, just really to encourage HR practitioners to do their level best, to keep on improving their skills at whatever level they have reached. Whether you're at the highest level, look at what you're missing and start working on those skills and knowledge that is required for you to be more and more effective. For our viewers, really try to give support to HR, understand their issues, but if you're not happy, again, there are channels to follow. And we can only wish the employees and employers the very best, as each and everybody contributes to national development.
Amazing. You just said we should try by all means to give support to HR practitioners, just like that. This has been an amazing conversation, I must make mention, and we were looking at, is HR really important? That was our topic of discussion for today. Thank you very much to everyone that tuned in to today's episode. For trainings and step-by-step guidance on any employment, management, and leadership matters, simply get in touch with Mr. Owen Katongo Kabanda on all his social media platforms. We're talking about Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram, if you want to get in touch with him. Until next week, I have been your host, Patricia Chilambi, and in the studio once again, I was with Mr. Owen Katongo Kabanda, who is Management and Leadership Advisor. From me and the entire production crew, it's goodbye.